Guys, welcome back to this week's video. So today I'm going to be talking about the top 3 books I read this year and the top 3 books I'm hoping to read next year. The kind of genres of books I like to read are mainly fantasy, but I do like to read like other genres as well, as you'll see throughout this video. I'm a university student, so reading books I actually enjoy reading takes me a little bit longer because it's not the top of my priority list. I have to read a lot of academic journals, but when I do have the chance to read my own choice of books, this is what I want to read. I didn't read many this year, but next year I'm setting myself for reading 30 books through the entire year, so we'll see how that goes in 2020. So let's get started. So the first book I'm going to talk about is The Tattooist Vows by Heather Morris. I read this year and I bought it in Manchester airport on the way to America. If you don't know what the book's about, it's about a guy called Lael and his stories he goes through being sent to Auschwitz and then becoming the tattooist, and then how he survives to the end and when he gets free. It's a love story actually, that you find out as it goes through about him and his wife Silica. A lot of people say that it's not very realistic, which I can kind of see why, because it kind of romanticizes the whole Auschwitz and prisoner of war camp situation, but it is very, very good. And if you like realistic books, then you will like it. The first thing I enjoyed about this book was the love story within it and the message about the love story. For quite a sad book in places, the love story within it kind of adds a hidden sweetness and a good message of no matter how hard like your relationship or your life gets, that you can always make yourself out of it, which sounds a bit corny, but it's a really good message that you get in quite a non-corny way throughout the book. The other thing I really like about this book is its world building and character building. You hear about Lael and Silica, who are kind of like the main characters within the book, but you do hear about other people's stories and where they come from and their life within Auschwitz of the time, which I like, because sometimes hearing just the main character story is a bit boring to the world building in this book, and that not everything was as nice as, say, Lael's story was within Auschwitz is good to hear, and it just added some like grit to the book. So yeah. So the next book I'm going to speak about is A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. This is a French book and it is part of a French series that they are currently translating into English. It's a very good book and it's got a lot of character and world building. It's about a girl called Athelia, sorry if I butchered that, and she is a little girl who lives on this island, and she has quite a gifted talent for reading objects and reading the histories of them. So anything she touches, she can read its history and where it came from and what's happened in its life, I guess. So she's quite an awkward child, but she is asked to marry the prince of another island. And within this world, there's like little islands of little dystopian islands basically, and they don't really interact. But when she gets asked to marry him, it's not really an ask, it's you are marrying me. So within the book, her and her maid get sent across to this island where she's going to marry this gentleman, and the story kind of builds from there, and it's about how she doesn't want to marry him and what she wants to do and how she's trying to get out of it. And that's kind of how the story goes. Very good, and as I say, character development's really good. Her character develops quite a lot within the book. She's quite boring to say, but she doesn't have much personality within the start. But as she gets through the book, you kind of understand her personality and she starts to like develop as a character more. However, as much as this is one of my favourite books I read this year, it wasn't my favourite personally. I did enjoy it and I'm looking forward to reading the next book in the series, but it just feels like the first third to half of the book were a bit of a prequel to the series, like not very much goes on. It's very much just telling you about her and her life and that kind of thing. But towards the end, like the second half of the book gets really good, a lot more happens, and it kind of leaves you wanting more from the world. Like I love this world, it was just the first half was a bit prequel-y, as it often is with young adult fantasy. But yeah, if you're wanting a new fantasy series, don't let what I just said put you off. I would 100% recommend this series. It's just beware that the first like 150 to 100 pages are quite prequely and quite like world building. But yeah, A Winter's Promise, very good book. I would 100% recommend. So the third book I'm going to speak about in this video is A Course of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas. This is 100% my favourite book I've read this year. I absolutely loved it, but I'm not going to tell you too much about the plot of it because it is the second book in a series, with the first book being called A Court of Thorns and Roses. Now, if you've heard anything about this series, you might have had it kind of told you a little bit like Beauty and the Beast, which I can see, but it's completely different. I see where to get the kind of story of it from, but it kind of doesn't fit to the Beauty and the Beast at all. Fair, who is the main character within this book, is a human, just a normal human like you and I, but she lives on the edge of a world that is a fairy world. And one day she goes out hunting and she kills what she thinks is a wolf. And actually, this wolf wasn't any wolf, it was part of the High Fae. But when they come out of their fairy world, they turn into animals. So when she kills this wolf, her life kind of gets flipped upside down and she's forced to go live within this fairy world. And the story and the series goes from there about how her life changes from living in this fairy world, what happens to her family, and how she adapts and lives in this new world. A very, very good world and character development within this series. A lot more character development, I'd say, for her is in the first book, but the second book is fantastic. And as I said, I'm not going to tell you the plot of this one, but all I can say is that it's quite a lot of romance and fighting. It's very good in that sense. If you like romance, there's enough romance in there, but also if you're not the biggest fan of romance and you love just a hard fantasy, then it's very good at that as well, because there's a lot of wars and fighting and disrupt between the different courts. She falls in love with a guy called Tamlin, and he is the prince of the Spring Court. And it's kind of their story within the first book, and then the end of the first book, there's a big fight and a big dispute, which ends completely different to you'd originally expect. And you see through the second book how that develops and how her story changes and how the dispute between all the different courts within the world kind of come as one. And yeah, very good series, but it is quite adult. There's quite a lot of adult love scenes, if you'd like, as well as the fighting scenes are quite gory. But yeah, definitely new adult, not young adult. But if you like hard romance and you like hard fantasy, 100% would recommend this series. So that were my top 3 favourite books that I've read this year. Now on to the second part of the video about the top 3 books I'm looking forward to reading in 2020. The first one is The Northern Lights by Philip Pullman. I'll put a picture of it here. This book is quite an old book. It's been out quite a long time. But the main reason that I've actually wanted to read it now is there's been a new TV series about it come on the BBC recently. I have watched one episode of it and it was very good. But then I stopped myself because I was like, actually, no, I want to read the book first before I watch the TV series. So, this book, I don't know 100% what the full plot of it is, but I do know it's about a girl called Lara, and everybody within this world has a demon, which is kind of like an element of their soul, but in an animal. And as children, the animals can change with how they're feeling, but as adults, they stay the same. So it's about Lara and her life with her demon and what goes on within her world. I do think it's a bit of there's a fighting scene and things at the end, and I think it's them trying to strip the animals away from children and see if the children can live without them. But that's all I know about it, but I am very much looking forward to reading this book. So yeah, that's the first book I'm going to be reading in 2020. So the next book I'm going to talk about is actually a non-fiction book. I'll put a picture of it here again. It's Greta Thunberg's book called No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference. She has just won the Times Person of the Year, and she's a young 16-year-old girl from Sweden. She has spoken at the UN press conferences and stuff like that, and she is very big on talking about the consequence of climate change. Now, I'm a geography student. I study a geography degree and I'm very much into this whole sustainability idea. And I'm hoping to read her book because the fact she's so young yet knows so much and is trying to make such a difference is quite inspiring. And I want to see how she came up with her ideas and where she got her real passion for changing climate change and trying to slow it down. So yeah, that's her book, and it kind of goes through different months. I think it's the last 2 years, and every month it shows you pictures of what she's done and talks about a different consequence or something of climate change. So yeah, that's the second book I'm hoping to read in 2020. The final book I'm going to be speaking about today is A Court of Wind and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. It is the third book within the series that I was talking about earlier, which is my favourite book series. This follows on from the second book, and I don't really know much about it. All I know is that I'm looking forward to reading it, and the cliffhanger that is at the end of the second book, I'm very curious to see how that goes on into the third book. Throughout the series, as I said earlier, she falls in love with a guy called Tamlin. Then in the second book, she twists to another court. She has to go to another court, and then it's held a fight at the end between the two courts at the end of the second book. And I want to see how that translates into the third book. So I'm very much looking forward to more world development and more character development within the third book. So yeah, that is the last and final book that I want to read in 2020. So I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Thank you for watching my little book review / what I want to read in 2020. I'll leave the links to all the 6 books that I mentioned down below. And please leave any of your book recommendations, things you think I'd enjoy reading in the comment section. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!